Welcome to the Fight Versus podcast. I'm your host, Matone, and today I'm here with my uncle, Wendsler Nosie, and we want to get an update on what was going on with the Apache Stronghold versus United States. So I'm going to go through the updates, and Uncle, if you have anything to clear up for us, for the listeners, and so we could get a better understanding of what's going on with Oak Flat.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so from Apache Stronghold, the Supreme Court update. Thank you to all our supporters who are continuing to pray about our Supreme Court petition to protect Oak Flat. As you may have heard, the federal government on Thursday, April 17th, announced that it plans as early as June 16th to publish a final environmental impact statement and begin moving forward with transfer and destruction of Oak Flat. On Friday, April 18, we filed a letter with the Supreme Court explaining that this makes it even more urgent in the court to hear our case. The Supreme Court considered our petition at the conference on April 17, 2025. The court issued a list of orders this morning, but did not take any action in our case. The next time the court could consider our petition is the next conference on April 25th, 2025. We can hear on April 28th or afterward whether the court will take our case, or the court may take our additional time to further consideration. Either way, we take this as a sign that the court is devoting extra time to our case and getting a careful examination. Until the court issues an order in our case, any justice can still change his or her mind at any time. Thus, we make our supporters continue praying. Take the justice will agree to hear our case and protect Oak Flat. Just as a sacred place of others' faith have long been protected throughout the country. Thank you again for your support, Apache Stronghold. So, Uncle, as we talk today, a lot of people kind of panic when they heard the news of Rio Tinto going forward with the mining. So I wanted to just give you so you give us an update on what's going on today.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you, Matone. Thank you again for being on your show, and thank you to all the listeners out there, and especially all the supporters and new supporters, and everyone just becoming more aware of this, of what we're facing, what we're all facing. So anyway, getting to your question about the update. So I'm going to have to kind of take you back to the first date and lead to what's going on now. So what happened is when, again, making a long story short, when Resolution Copper went after Oak Flats, Chi'chil Bildagoteel, is that they were moving the process illegally without any kind of consultation, without any important meetings that you normally have when you talk about a land transfer. And there's a lot of laws that pertain to that. So what we got to remember is the fact that when 2014, when John McCain, placed the bill on a late night rider, exempting them from everything, from every federal policy procedures that we as people or anyone normally follows. So this is where Resolution Copper really became more confident that they didn't need to do anything. So that again, then we fall to what John McCain did in giving them this full exemption with Congress voting and the president signing. And so they were given the exemptions, full exemptions. So from there, we had filed our court case on our religion since time immemorial. But because they were moving so quick in this EIS, regardless of the EIS, as it stated in John McCain's legislative bill, that the land transfer will take place. So even though that EIS was flawed with so many different things, they were moving forward. But one of the things that they didn't know was we're going to defend our sacred, or we're going to defend our holy place. We're going to defend, the deities, and time immemorial, how our people have from time to time, for all these centuries to be able to conduct our ancient ceremonies, was that we filed our case of immediate harm to stop, so that the federal government can hear, the full out case. So from there, the district court here in Phoenix, Arizona, ruled that, before we went to court, the United States pulled back the EIS. So remember, we're going in, we're filing immediate harm. The EIS was moving. And right when we got to court, the United States pulled the EIS. So what happened was the court heard our position, but said, well, I'm not going to render a decision for you because there's no EIS.
There's no harm.
No harm.
Yeah.
Because now the United States pulled back. So then from there we went to the Supreme Court in San Francisco, and it was three federal judges who heard the case, and two were against us, and one was for us. But let me explain the two. So the one really hammered us because he had an involvement with the San Francisco Peaks ruling when they were making that decision when they were fighting on
reusable
the
water.
Yeah. So he had made a decision supporting the use of the water on the San Francisco Peaks. But the second lady, the federal judge lady, what happened with her was that she went on based on the first judge in the district that said, well, there's no immediate harm because, the United States pulled back the EIS.
Yes.
But we did have one completely for us that said, that he opposed everything that Resolution Copper was doing and what it did and what it was going to harm. So that's where it came 2-1. Then we were on our way to the Supreme Court, but we were pulled back by the Ninth Circuit Court themselves because they wanted to rehear it. And again, it went 6-5, 6 for Resolution Copper, 5 for us. But some of the federal judges had that same argument, was that, well, there's no immediate harm. Because remember, we had to start off in that way because there was immediate harm. But as it went forward, the court case got bigger because it was a legit case that the federal government needs to hear, because the United States is knowingly giving a sacred land to an entity. It'd be different if it was already in the hands of Resolution Copper.
Right.
But this is the United States is knowing what they're going to do to destroy. And plus what it's going to represent for all Native people across the country, and also what it's going to represent with all religious groups, and then also with minerals and land base. So then now we're at the Supreme Court. So what happened was that, we took our case in September. And as you know, we've been idling ever since. And there was the first part of, within the first 6 weeks, we'll be heard, the excitement was there. Then we went into a time where, we're being rescheduled. Then, the questions come up, well, what does this mean? And then we went far beyond a lot of court cases that are submitted. That now, we're here, in April. And but what came back was the fact that this is a huge case, because we're talking about the Constitution of the United States, which also involves all religious groups. And then it talks about the land base. And then it talks about on the political side, the policy and procedures, and how Congress had, just eliminated everything. And so it raised all these questions. So it's a really huge case that involves everybody in America. So we understand the deliberation that the Supreme Court judges are going through right now, because it's a huge case. It's, it's ranked in the top 4 of the United States. So now let me take you back to our Ninth Circuit Court hearing in Los Angeles. What our attorneys stressed deeply to the federal judges that the United States must inform us that the EIS, and when they decide of it to take place, they will need to notify us. Because if you go back to the first EIS, they didn't notify anybody. They were already going to move it, and we just got wind of it. And that's how we were able to file those injunctions. And that's how, before we even got heard, the United States pulled back. So what I'm really proud about our law firm, our team, is the fact that we had the federal judges tell them, Resolution Copper, the United States, that no, you're going to notify us, so you're going to have to give that notice. So that was the notice that was given that we're talking about today. And I'm real grateful, because if we wouldn't have gotten that, then they would have done the same thing, move without even notifying anybody.
Right.
So now it comes into what's at play. What we got to remember is that we are still at the Supreme Court with our injunction, with our court case. It's still sitting there waiting for the federal judges, Supreme Court judges, to decide to take or not take. Now you see the same remnants that Donald Trump, the Republicans have been doing, is ramrodding everything on everybody. So they did the same thing here without even waiting for the federal court to decide to either hear or not hear. Now they made the federal agency announce that we're going to move forward. And that should irritate the federal judges, because that's what this administration has been doing to everybody.
They've already been jumping things already.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Without even, looking at the law. I mean, they already violated all the laws. And so one of the discussion I have is that why they're pushing now? Because if the Supreme Court hears this, they're going to completely see the violation of the United States and the federal agency and Resolution Copper, because all of that is going to be exposed of the illegal acts that they did. So there has to be a big fear on the government side. So they have to probably act on moving something quicker and faster, like they've been doing with these other issues in the country.
Yeah.
So anyway, so it blows us away, because without waiting for the outcome, why jump to conclusions? And they have to for themselves. So anyway, they pushed it. And so now we can ask the Supreme Court. Now it's immediate harm.
Yeah.
So it's amazing how, how we got here. It's amazing how things have, the turn events that have taken place. But like I've been telling people around me and those who call me, is the fact that it comes through a lot of prayers. Because we know that when, even as a person, when we do things wrong, we know that eventually it's going to catch up with us.
Yes.
So anything we do harming people will eventually catch up. And I really believe that's what this whole case represents in America, is the illusion that was created and how it does not benefit people like us, or in general people.
Yeah.
And so, it'll catch up with you. So where we are right now, to me, is we're in a really good position, because now, they started the flame, they started argument, and now they're going to attack the first people of this country. They're going to attack what they came here, where they almost annihilated us totally.
And not too long ago.
Yeah, not too long ago. And now, now they're going to have to face us, because as it was told, the last defense line is going to be our identity, our history, our religion, who makes up who we are. But what we defend is the Mother Earth is who we defend.
Right.
And I think, they picked on the wrong people, because if anything, the guilt, the horror stories and everything has been swept underneath the carpet, but now it's not going to be. And from here, what we say, even though it's a hard time, is true healing is going to come from this. But we all have to be activated from it, because each of us, no matter what race we come from, we've been all subject to colonization, capitalism, and and the way the politics have been running has been really deceiving a lot of us.
Right.
So, people got to look at this case, is that if there's any case out there to really address these issues, that's this case.
And for everybody to understand, because when you're first saying EIS, so the EIS is the environmental impact statement, and an environmental impact statement is a comprehensive document required under the National Environmental Policy Act that assesses the potential environmental effects of a proposed federal action, and examines the impact of various factors, including land, water, air, wildlife, and cultural resources, and considers alternatives to the proposed action. The EIS process ensures that environmental considerations are integrated into federal decision making. So that's what it's about, and that's what the federal judges have been waiting for, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's why, again, it goes back to what I said earlier. Why would they move this EIS? Because as it gets traction, then what happens is people learn what the environmental impact statement's all about. It's about, is it worth it or is it not worth it? Is it good? Is it bad? And that makes our leaders of America to make better decisions on behalf of the constituents. But what you see here is that a lot of our leaders in Arizona never made a good decision for the people of Arizona, because everything that you read there is affecting the Southwest and affecting, Arizona itself. But then it set precedents to the rest of the country. And I think we don't want to be a state that sets a negative precedents all over the country, because they're going to say, where did that came from? What did the Arizona people do? What did the native tribes do? What did people do? This is where we have to stand up for what's right, even though our leaders are not doing what's right. And that's where, again, it's a big, we're all a big part of this case. It's not just the Apache people, it's everybody in this country. And that's why I was saying, so much, is that it's so unique, because it's like we finally can be free. We can finally be free from, all the lies and all the negligence that comes from leadership. to the people. And that's why this EIS, and it's in the government, it's in the Constitution, a part of the Constitution, it's in the policy, procedures, and laws that's supposed to govern that the United States goes into a project on the best for the people. And in this case, that's all been null and void.
Yes, and like we were talking about before, they always seem to skip environment. They can always bypass environmental laws. And with the government today talking about how this country is founded on religion, and this is for us to get in there and say, well, this is about religion, and it's the only way we can stop them because they don't care about the environment right now.
No, they don't, and that's the sad thing, because the environment is actually more spiritual than a corporation. Because if you look at what they've done with corporation, they actually made them like a person that has to be heard. But yet the true is those things that you mentioned that they're supposed to govern to assure that it's taken care of, but they have no voice. And so when they create their laws and policies behind everybody's back, they can create new ones, or they can do like they did, exempt themselves from those laws that's supposed to protect. And then, so if you look at where we are today, that's exactly what they did. So the only thing that they did not do, because it hasn't been a confrontation since the beginning of America, is our religion. So now, for us Native Americans, our religion has now been called to the front by these people, but we have the justice system, then we have the people, the public. It's critical because this is the oldest religion here in North America. And if they can do this, then that means every other religion has no position, because in the eyes of the United States, what they say is that those religions came over to this side of the country. So this is why the government itself can walk over any kind of religion at will. It would just be a fight with the public. But in America, the Native American religion is the oldest one. And I try to tell people of Christian faith that if you look at your Bible, we do everything that's in that Bible pre-Bible. That's how that Bible came into existence. And so I tell people, when you hear me talk, you're actually hearing your great-great-great-great-great-grandfather tell you what he went through, because we're going through the same thing.
And we're always doing stuff. We're always following Mother Earth's, way of life. I mean, I always get people ask me like, "Hey, what's the respectful way to do this? What's the respectful way to cut these trees? What's the respectful way to bury a pet?" And we'd have to tell them, like, for Mother Earth, this more respectful way. So it is an old religion that they call it, but this is how we've been doing it for years and years, and for them to finally try to understand what we're talking about, it's going to have to be a desecration of a whole. Of Oak Flat before they can finally understand what we're been trying to tell them.
No, you're exactly right, Matolf. I said, because I was telling my family, I said, no, it's time to tell the people that if you look at Oak Flats, I said, it's on death row now. It's it's making its steps to that chamber where the United States is going to kill it. Will it take that before anybody ever wakes up that we cannot live without the mother? But, it's on its steps right now. So there's so many things that we could do right now, to save it, to save this land that's so important and crucial to the southern part of Arizona, because of how the moisture moves in, how the water flows from the higher peaks. And then if they go with this mine, as big as this mine is going to be, you have 184 degrees rising to the surface, 50 miles radius is going to be hot, 10 degrees hotter. And then everything that goes by as far as moisture is going to be diluted. So it's not going to reach those places anymore. I mean, so, it's a time where every one of us need to stand up that, our ancestors tried way back when. When I say ancestors, I mean everybody's ancestors.
Yes.
But now we're the children of those people. So now we're at this point that we have an opportunity to stand for what is creation, what is God, what is Mother Earth, why we are here. Because that's one thing we should all agree on, is that our mother is the one that takes care of us. From the time we came from our mother, from the training of our mother, the care of our mother, then we go directly to the earth, because from there the mother cares for us. And that's what's teaching, that's the teaching, of all Native people are Indigenous people. But this consuming of greed and power is destroying that very fabric, to where if this happens in America right now, this fight, then there's nothing stopping them. And I would then say, agree with Geronimo way back when he said, is this over? And my life was, no, it's not over. We're going to defend. We're going to come out and do what's right in a religious way. But now I have to be in that position to say and look at the general public, everybody. Wow, is this really over? Have you really become an instrument to the consumption of what corporation is? Because you got to remember, here comes AI. The technology is coming to take everything that you have.
Right.
And that's morally wrong. I mean, it just blows me away. And that's why I reach out to Christian people. I reach out to Native people. I reach out wherever I can, because morally that's wrong. And yet we're not saying nothing about it. But that's what this fight at Oak Flats is what brings all of these issues to the front. So that's why it's so important that the United States has to suppress us as much as they can to keep our voices out.
And with Trump, with him in office, in the article from Channel 3 TV, they said that he had signed, for the mining to start going. And what I was talking about to you earlier is, it's not like Trump came up with this new. This has been building. This is a foundation that other government officials have already done. He just going ahead and say, okay, let's keep on doing it. So like we've been fighting this for 2014 with McCain. So as people don't know, Uncle, is like a lot of senators and congressmen already went with this plan for residue copper to take Oak Flat. And so I just want everybody to know that even though, Trump had already did this out front, it's already been going on in the back end. Now it's just coming out in front.
And what you say there is a lot of truth. I mean, and with my experience for over 30 years, well, actually like 50 years, dealing with the federal government, is that when it came right down to issues like this, and then when the Mount Graham issue came, and when Oak Flats that we're dealing with, what's really crazy is when you talk about the environment, and you talk about the religion, and you talk about the future. When I met with a lot of congressional leaders personally, they all agree. They would all take me aside and say to me, Chairman Nosie or Councilman Nosie, you're right. My heart is with you, but that's not how America works. And that began to frighten me as a young man, when I started to hear that. And it's in everybody. They tell me, the human way of living, the human way of concern is not important. That's not what we decide on. And as I got older, being the chairman of the tribe and meeting more of these people, is really witnessing that they were actually right, because they would vote opposite. And so when it came to as a native person, representing a native tribe and dealing with the government, it got to the point where it didn't matter if you're Republicans or Democrats. And I even made a clear statement out in the public, and I said, if you're running for the Democratic Party, if you're running for the Republican Party, it don't matter anymore, because who they're really interviewing for is not to the people, it's to the corporations. And the way things are managed is for them. Then from there, everything comes down financially, support. Everybody's talking to each other. We need this person because, he's going to support this corporation. He's going to support mining and all these things. And that's how we elect our people. And some of these people, like for instance, Paul Gosar, I mean, that guy's, he doesn't have any kind of a career in economic development. He doesn't have a career in the environmental issues. He doesn't have a career in our education in these important fields. He does have an education in being a dentist and what dentist needs to do, and I give him that. But anything else that requires true leadership, he doesn't have it. And so what I find, and what they tell me in Washington, come on, Mr. Nosie, you need to know this, or if you don't know it, you need to learn it. They would say that a long time ago when the prosper of gold, silver, and then eventually copper, they were reaching back to families in Europe and bringing them here who had expertise, and then they sent them across the country and then they became states, and they set them up into the states. And they told me that this is a big monopoly. You're fighting a monopoly created by the wealth that came from Europe, and it's all about extracting and taking and selling. And so like we see here, 75% of the copper is still going to Asia. It's going out. And so whatever and how this country was created, it seems like it still exists today. So you're exactly right. Those are the things that I've confronted ever since I've been a leader, and even in the state of Arizona, when our congressional leaders know it's wrong, but when they're financially supported by mining or anybody adjacent tied to mining, then they tend to forget us. And I can tell you, they actually know we are right. But because they live for today, they want to care for their 401ks. They want to care for their children, not for your children, their children.
Yeah.
And speaking for all those years I served in the government, I've clearly witnessed that. I've clearly seen it, and I've had so many discussions with leadership. And that's what irritates me, that not only Native people, but all people of all color, they're not here for us. Right. They're just here for us to be, I guess, the new modern type of slaves for their purpose.
And when we got Ruben Gallego in, he got voted in. He beat Kerry Lake. He already voted to put the copper as a metal that we needed for Arizona, and that vote went out, and he was on the bill for voting yes on that. So copper went on the bill. That it was. They could fact check me, but I know for sure it was a bill that they wanted to put minerals on this bill that they needed. And copper was one of them. And Ruben Gallego already just got into office. He went to all the reservations and, talked about how he gets in, he's going to help the communities. And, he went to Salt River. He went to a bunch of tribes. I was even at one where he was at. And as soon as he got in, he voted to put that copper on that list, and I was like, oh, man, you can't trust anybody.
Well, when people ask me, about supporting him. Yeah. And I said to them, I'm really worried. I said, because of my expertise, I said, I met with Ann Kirkpatrick, actually Rick Ramsey way back when Rick Ramsey was really pushing the tribal leadership at that time before me, to go into being partners with Resolution Copper and, just all his play that he was doing, which eventually, he got prosecuted for it and went to jail. And then right after that was Ann Kirkpatrick, who came up for District 1. And so, matter of fact, I sponsored a campaign contribution here in Phoenix with all the 22 tribes coming to Arizona, and really gave, a big push behind Ann Kirkpatrick, which she outlined her plan for Arizona. But she also said, when it came to the copper mine, there's so many copper mines already. There's so many, supplies already for copper. And when it comes to Resolution Copper, I know that they're a foreign mining company, and, I'm against foreign mining company. And this is your sacred land. It's a holy place, so Mr. Nosie, when I get in, I definitely will protect that. So she won. And in January, when she was there in Washington, early February, I got word from our lobbyists that Ann Kirkpatrick is supporting the mine, that you better get up here. So when I got up to Washington, and as soon as I walked in her office, the first thing she told me, she says to me, Chairman knows I don't know why you're not supporting the mine. The mine will bring jobs, it'll bring money, bring opportunity. And I'm looking at her like, we just supported her. She just told us that she will, defend. Yeah. And I'm looking at her and I go, what? And then she goes on to say that, your people were wrongly done by the United States, and we all know it, but this is time, that you could step up and really work with the mine and get all these benefits. And then she said, then I looked at her and I said, hey, that's not what we talked about. I said, we talked about the environmental impacts, not just for San Carlos, but everybody, even for Phoenix and Tucson, everybody. And then also Resolution Copper pushing for exemption, which is a bad precedence that will be set across this country. And you agree to all that. Then she said to me, she goes, I still don't get it. So why are you trying to take your Indian people back to the days that they were nothing and all they could do is just piss in their beds? That's what she told me. And then she went on, and then by then my lobbyist was holding me back and said, Chairman Nosie, we got to go. Yeah. You have another meeting. Come on, Chairman, come on. So they're actually like my staff and everybody was kind of like ushering me out. Yeah. And then my lobbyist turns back to her and says, well, Chairman Nosie's got to go because we got another hearing because they're honoring 100 years of Geronimo passing. And as I was walking out, because I already left, she was, I don't know, about 10 feet behind me, 20, 15 feet. I was already walking. And then she said something, and then we got out of her office. Then I asked my council lady that was with me, I asked her, I said, did I hear that right? And she said, oh, Chairman, just keep going, just keep going. What she said, oh, yeah, and Geronimo killed a lot of our people, too. Mm-hmm. I mean, to create a comparison, you know, and then to destroy the history that wasn't even, you know, the history that she was referring to. Mm-hmm. And I just sunk, you know, after all that front that she gave us and gave the 22 tribes. Mm-hmm. So the next one that came up was Paul Gosar. Yeah. And man, Paul Gosar was good. Like, how you see him? Well, we didn't know him. Yeah. So when he came in, you know, he took off his jacket, laid down. He goes, I heard what Anchor Patrick did, and I guarantee you, you know, if I get elected to this, you know, we will, you know, your words, you will be heard. We will put a stop to this. Mm-hmm. And as soon as he got in, he was worse than Anchor Patrick. Yeah. No doors open for us. He made it known. Yeah. So when I felt bad for Gallego, because you want to keep trusting, you know, and I think he hurt me the most. Because after, you know, seeing what these two did, and then Gallego being a
Hispanic.
person, a person of culture, and even being a descendant from Indian people, because we got to remember, you know, how people came to be, because they came from our mothers who were raped hundreds and hundreds of years ago, you know, and so we always look at them as a part of us, but to do that, I'm like. And people were running to me for interviews and stuff. And I said, why do you think I didn't come out? Because I don't know about these politicians no more. You know, I don't know, because, you know, they've lied to us so many times, and they continue to do it. And it just hurt coming from more of a person of culture. But yet, you know, he better be thankful to Gojava, because being who Gojava is, really restored a lot, that we have a lot in common, and it gave us a lot of hope, and it gave a lot of Hispanics and, you know, Latinos and, you know, everybody. It gave them hope that we can tie, you know, and really work together to fight this battle. Because we got to remember, the United States looks at them as immigrants. The United States looks at them that they're lucky they're even here. Right. But if you look at if they came from Mexico, no, they've always been here. You know, they come from our mothers.
Yeah. And with Raul, who passed away recently, I mean, he was really for, you know, Oak Flat, and I met him, and he was very nice guy. And to see him pass, you know, while we're doing this fight, it's almost like we're all trying to, you know, do it for all the ones that passed. We're still fighting for them and still fighting. And again, it goes back to cancer, you know, like with mining and cancer. I mean, he passed away from cancer, and so. Just trying to stop this mine again is not just for us and our people. It's also for, you know, the community, the public, you know, the future of everybody, water, land, air, that we're all fighting for. You know, it's not just for us, and it's something that a lot of people don't understand. You know, like every time we hear it on the news, it's always, well, you know, Apache's going to lose a sacred site. Well, yeah, we are, but you know, you're also going to lose too. You know, and not just us. And so I always tell everybody, you know, it's Apache Stronghold, and the Apaches are the one that's fighting for everybody, and no one doesn't realize it.
No, you're right, and you know, I'm grateful to all the different tribes that I went out and I sat with, and you know, and talked with, and they all given me support. You know, they told me, you know, Mr. Nosie, you know, you're our brother. You know, you're fighting this fight. You come from a long. Strong people, and just talking to you, you know, your spiritual part of you is very deep, and that's kind of a leadership that we need, and just your love for all the people, because you don't leave out any tribes. You know, you always bring us, you know, to the forefront. Not like some other issues where tribes tend to do just themselves. Yeah. But here, you know, I tell them no, because it's our fight. I say, I can't move until you know what I'm doing. I said, I can't move because it involves your children. But see, not only Native people, but all other different race. You know, I've been to LA, everywhere. I've been everywhere. And I'm really grateful to the churches. You know, the churches have really opened their door. So many have applied to be an amicus brief to our case. And, you know, I went almost everywhere in this country. And it's amazing because we all suffer the same way. But it's so crazy on the point where our leaders can do so much and do better. And I just had a conversation earlier, you know, with some people at Oak Flats when we're talking about the poor, the needy, And I said, what really gets me is that the United States is giving away government land to corporations. If you look at who's getting land right now, it's corporations. That's who's getting all the lands. And I said, they can create just like a reservation like they did for us and bring all the homeless people there. And, bring them to where, like how we have water running through, where they can be self-sustaining. They can do all these things. And then when they talk about free health care, they already do that on the reservations. That's not even something that's out of this world. It's already been established when they put us as prisoners of war. And I was saying, if the United States doesn't want to help them, then just send these people to our house bowl. We'll take care of them, because they're people. We don't like seeing them suffer from things that they could easily get. But why do they do that to their own people? They really don't care. So any of these people who are losing their lives on the street or anywhere, they don't care. So when I bring these issues to the forefront to them, they get scared. It's something they don't want to hear. Politicians don't want to hear this. There is an out to this. We have water. We have land where we could grow food, be in abundant, where we don't have to worry about none of these things. But no, they don't want to think of why God put us here. They don't want to think about really helping each other, and that's why it gets upsetting. And when you lose somebody like Grijalva, that was committed to that and understood that was true leadership coming from a man who is a father, grandfather. A man that cared, not just for his children, but everybody. But look at all these other leaders that aren't not even making decisions based on that. And even our top one, the president. Now he turns his sight on us to fight the native people. All people should be at rage with that. After knowing that you not legally took this land. You forcefully, there was to exterminate us forever, to put us in places where we're not supposed to make it, to put us in places where nobody would never hear us, to even, pretend like we don't even exist. I mean, that's our leadership. And that's what I was saying when it becomes between the Republicans and Democrats. And I can go back to what our old people used to say. It's just nothing but moving their lips and no meanings to their words. But I really think it's real. We're in a point where we really need real, true leadership. Someone who really does care for this country and for the people, no matter what condition we're in. But somebody can fix it.
And with Resolution Copper, they get into everybody's pockets, and there's nothing we could do about it. And I understand, like with St. Carlos, there is poverty there, so flashing money to our tribal members is gonna they're going to buy in. And Resolution Copper, they're sponsoring the NABI, the Native American basketball invitation that's coming out. They support it every year, and I don't know how much money they take, and I don't even think like the Native organizations care. They just see the money and say, okay, we'll put you on that sponsorship, and we'll take the money. And so it's hard for us to see our child members or our people taking that money like that when we're trying to fight, to keep this area. So what can we do to, with Resolution Copper, even Freeport too, they also, they buy out a lot of natives out there. What can we do to help that? I mean, what can we do to stop that actually?
I think, again, it goes back to what I was saying earlier about the Apache Stronghold in our court case. Because what it does is that we reveal all this stuff. Because kind of going back to like we're saying how Trump became president, and then what he's doing it in front of everybody now when it was done in the back. It's kind of the same scenario that we need to look at our mistakes. We need to look at our error. We need to look at, how we are destroying ourselves. And it goes right back to what the old people were saying was know who you are, know your identity, know why you're here. No matter how much you can get educated, as long as you know. And they used to say, take the good, leave the bad, bring that in, how we could really help each other. I think, we really gone away from that because talking about San Carlos, for instance, we did get a report out from one of the media out here in Phoenix. And then if you listen to the audio, one of the contractors laughs and says, we sent a lot of checks out to San Carlos. We didn't even know we got one back. Right. And it was like a big joke, and he really, desecrated the people of San Carlos that, as you were saying, we have no morals, we don't care anymore. But it does hurt when you have those tribal members, taking advantage of that.
Yeah.
And it really goes back to the parents, really goes back to like, how were they raised? Don't they even listen to what's being said at the ceremonies? Don't they even know, all these things that we get lectured by? What happened to them? And I think only them can answer that, because it comes back to where how much they're going to hurt the future, not knowing what they're doing. But I think they do know, because it comes back to money, it comes back to power and greed, and really just letting go who God is. Do you know who God is? Do you know in Apache, Bikeonan Yosen, do you know who he is? Do you listen at the ceremony when they say this is Nima, Nagosanhi Diku Nima? This Mother Earth is your mother,
Yeah.
So, and I see them across, and I'm like, but it comes down to, my mother used to say to me, people tend to look over there for evil, but where evil is created is within us.
Mm-hmm.
So you have good and you have bad inside you. So what are you going to make the day, the weeks, the month, the year, and in your life journey? What are you going to move? Because those two are vehicles without a driver.
Yeah.
You're the one that's going to drive it. So I feel bad for these people, because it's not for me to judge them. I'm just like, just blown away, because like, what are you taught?
Mm-hmm.
Because when you talk about, Native people destroying water, destroying the future of our children, killing all the animals, changing the climate, I mean, the first one should already tell you, no, it's not right.
Right.
But when you go down the line of how 10, 15 things come up, and they still decide for money, that money is the answer. I think if you were to ask, like real traditional people, real people who care, they would tell you that Mother Earth is important. It's our survival, because all those things that you want, it doesn't matter. Because without Mother Earth, you don't have that. So we lose morals, we lose integrity, these leaders, these people. But, I had a friend in North Carolina, Reverend John Mendez, tell me that, once your people start doing that, because he's seen it in the African Americans, that once you start seeing that in your people, Wendsler, he said, then it's a warning. He said, you got to start doing something. For us, we didn't put out the warning, and it got worse. So once your people start taking the benefits to destroy the earth and destroy the religion, then you kind of know where you're headed. But I'm really, I'm still real hopeful to a lot of the people in San Carlos who support. There's a lot of them out there, especially the elders, the medicine people. But then where I worry about is the council. The council, sometimes they come in with a different perception, but they need to listen to their people. They need to listen, because we're okay. We're all right. Be smart about using the land. Be smart about using the water. Be smart about defending, what God gave us. And know that what we're up against, and defend us against that with what the United States is trying to do. Right now, they should be all defending us from what Trump's doing, because he's turning on the tribes. Don't sit there after Trump has already came into the living room.
Yeah.
I mean, stop him at the door. And me as a tribal leader, at one time and doing, the stronghold, is that I'm stopping it at the door, because I'm not going to allow a predator come in to harm our family. And that's how we should be, But yeah, it's pretty sad when you run into that. When you sit in almost all political leaders, I'm glad we have some political leaders holding their ground. Bless them, because they get ridiculed for it as well. But for the others, I just hope, and we pray for them. I just hope that they come to some clear senses and then make the right decision.
I hope that they understand, that especially the council, they're the first ones to, they're the targets for the resolution copper. They're the big targets. And I had talked to you about this earlier before, when people voted, a lot of natives that around here, this area, would tell me, oh, we're okay. I mean, as long as we stay on our land, we're all right. I mean, we have sovereignty. And again, I went to you about it. I said, Uncle, are the native people getting sovereignty wrong about what it really means? And you had explained to me the other night about it, and I just wanted you to explain the sovereignty of our tribal area and what it means, because I think people have misconception that we're okay because we have sovereignty.
Yeah, no, I see that a lot, and I hear speeches being made, you know. So you got to remember, I guess, kind of like what venue you're at. So if you're at a government venue, meaning like government programs, you know, or maybe you're at a conference and it's all run by government programs, you know, and you have them all up there talking, and they're talking about sovereignty. Well, when they talk about sovereignty, what they're referring to is anything above your feet to your head, meaning your education, your health, law enforcement, you know, assistance, whatever, you know, programs that will assist you, you know, housing, you know, whatever it may be. So that's what they're referring to. They're not referring to the ground you stand on.
They're not referring to the land.
They're not referring to the land, because the land, the United States, in saying that they took over this country, they have total jurisdiction. This is their land. This is theirs. You have nothing to do with it as far as coming to us and us approving if we're going to allow you or not allow you.
Yeah.
And so that's not sovereignty. You know, sovereignty is, you know, they got to explain it that it's you as a complete person, and what is the program going to provide for you on behalf of the government or on behalf of the tribal government or the federal government or whatever they get from the grants from the state. But that's what they're referring to, that we have sovereignty on that. But in anything else as living condition, you don't have sovereignty.
Yeah.
So as Native people, the land is intertwined to who we are and what we are. And the land is what makes everything work, the earth. And that's why we have to fight for that kind of sovereignty, a true sovereignty, where nobody will come in and intervene, you know, enter our reservation and do at will. So like I'm facing right now with San Carlos. San Carlos was created by executive order. So I'm pretty sure a lot of people out there know what that means.
Yeah.
Is that's the president who decided to put a reservation there, not Congress.
Right.
So we didn't get approved by Congress, by the president. So let me give you hopefully I'm not giving Donald Trump ideas, but let me give you an idea. Let me give you an example. I mean, so our reservation has been dwindled several times by executive order. That didn't even go through the Congress. The president, whoever wanted it, you know, we're going to slice that off.
No one voted on it.
Yeah, nobody. And so let's say that the president can come in and by executive order really take Oak Flats, and they want the water, go in the globe, go about just, you know, going east by our casino, cut across towards Triplets, towards Middle Strip, and they head towards Klondike. They can take all of that. Those are pools of water. And so that's what executive order is. So I do get upset sometimes when I listen to people talk, that they really need to explain what that means, what sovereignty means. So that's how you know when you're at these government functions, they will talk about sovereignty about you as a person and the program funding, not about the land, not about your religion, not about your identity.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the big difference.
And that's what I was talking about before. So like sovereignty, if you really look at sovereignty, like Canada's a sovereignty nation. Mexico's a sovereignty nation. How can we be sovereignty if we have to be federally recognized? So we have to be federally recognized, then we have sovereign. So I think that's where people get mixed up at, like, how are we sovereign if we have to be federally recognized? You know what I mean? Because Canada doesn't have to be federally recognized by the United States. Mexico doesn't have to be federally recognized by the United States. So when people say, oh, we have sovereign, this is our sovereignty rights. Well, what are you talking about first? You talking about your land or your area? Because that's not ours. I mean, like you just mentioned, it's from head to toe. And so how are we going to be sovereignty if we have to be federally recognized?
Yeah, let me throw another monkey wrench for your listeners. Then they can go and study and figure this out because it's good for them.
Yeah.
But let me take you back to our court case. When at the Ninth Circuit Court, the United States said clearly to the federal judges in the Ninth Circuit Court, they said, we are still the wards of the government. This is what they said. And they used the example of a prisoner in a federal prisoner in their federal detention center, of how they have the responsibility to do what they need to do for the best of that prisoner. That's what they use in our court case, telling us. And the United States was reminding the Ninth Circuit Court that they have jurisdiction, that they are the wardens over us.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I thought I was going to have a real big, I was like, wow, they finally said it. And I thought I was going to have all these tribal leaders come to the forefront and say, did you just hear what they said?
Mm-hmm.
They said we're the wards of them yet. Nothing.
Right.
And I'm like, wait a minute. You know, a lot of these leaders have education. You know, a lot of these leaders have degrees. Why didn't any of them ever put a concern forward and tell the United States, wait a minute? Because that destroys the very discussion we're having about sovereignty.
Mm-hmm.
That means we don't have sovereignty at all. It's an illusion. That's why I said a lot of these things in America is an illusion. So we tend to believe it, so we tend not to do nothing. Mm-hmm. And that's why we really have to dissect everything. Where do we really stand? So we really care about our children for the future, then we really need to dissect this, what's happening today, so we can know where our children are going. But as long as we stay in this limbo, that's what we're teaching the next generation, the next generation. So at the end, nobody's going to fight for anything. We're just going to be falling off the cliff.
Yeah. And there's two ways that the government can take sovereignty. They could take it by force, or they could take it by, buying us out. If we can't make a deal, then they're just going to take it by force. I mean, there is no law saying they can't touch, St. Carlos or, Salt River or White Mountain or, any Gila River. They could take any tribe they want. I mean, they're just being nice about it right now.
No, yeah, exactly. And that's why I'm saying, if you're a leader, you need to be concerned about the future and what it really means, because we're coming to the point where there's not enough of anything. Mm-hmm. I mean, and that's the thing that I don't see statistics hitting the tables of anybody, that there's just not enough. And you could get all the reports that tell you about the environment and so forth. So we really have to become sustainable. And I think with tribal governments, tribal people, that's the road we need to start taking. We need to come back to how we used to travel to each other and do exchanges. We had our own marketings. We were all worked together at one point before this disaster came that made it America. But prior to that, we had our own economic base. We had all these good things were happening. And I just wish that tribal leaders would begin to have that discussion, that we need to come back to that point, because that's how we're going to all save each other. Mm-hmm. But if you go at this independently and thinking that the mainstream is going to help you, the corporate people, they're not. Mm-hmm. The only way they're going to help you is that you just become their slaves. You obey them, you listen to them, and you're just one that's going to be, whenever they need to get rid of you, they get rid of you. Mm-hmm. And what kind of spirit is that? When God put us here in the world for a whole different reason, mm-hmm. you really betray God's rules, God's purpose.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm excited, because of what the Stronghold brings to this country in this fight. But we just really need everybody to be involved.
Yeah. And I also had, like, in back of my mind, I always thought, like, I wonder why Uncle is hitting it with religion when it only affects Apaches. Why not we hitting the environment, because it affects everybody? But then when being with you and doing all these things, I thought they don't even listen to the environment. They're only going to listen to religion. And so this is why come to my conclusion of why you were hitting it with religion.
Yes, again, you go back to the founding of this country by, the Europeans. They almost wiped us clean from the face of the earth. Mm-hmm. And then they, by their laws, breaking treaties and, making policies and all these disasters and extermination, mm-hmm. All that came to the forefront. And I'm pretty sure they thought we were pretty much whipped, That's why I hate to keep leaving you with stories, but it goes back to when I became chairman. And see, one of the things that people don't understand is that, and they need to understand, and I'm talking about tribal leadership, is that when you win council, when you win vice chairman, or what you want to call it, president, vice president, or delegates, you're already monitored by the United States. They have a whole monitoring system already in place. So when I go back, I did a walkout in Globe when I was 18 years old, where I fought, Globe High School for for giving all the kids unexcused, where I had a complete walkout, and that hit major news in Arizona, and then we created policy changes. Then here comes the Mount Graham, where I fought for Mount Graham, them building telescopes, and same thing, same issue, giving exemptions to the law, and going all over the world, talking to Italy, Germany, to have them not support the telescope project, going across this country to all the major universities that were involved. Now I become councilman. Now I'm chair.
Yeah.
So when I got elected the chair, 2 weeks into my being seated as the chair, I get invited by the United States to come to Washington. So I'm gearing up, put all my stuff together. They talk about the law enforcement, health department, education, social programs, all this stuff, So here I go to Washington. So the first place they take me is the Pentagon. Tell me everything about the Pentagon, the War Department, the military, and all this stuff. Then the next day they take me to the Supreme Court, and they tell me about the Supreme Court judges and how they're appointed, Republicans, Democrats, and how it works and everything. Then they kind of brief me on Congress, how that sets. Then they take me to the White House. And then, like on the fourth day, I'm on a plane coming back. And I'm like, I didn't even talk about my people. They didn't even ask me anything about my people. So I get home, and my mother, of all people, didn't start that educational thing. Nobody started it out here. It was my mother who said to me, where did you go to Washington for? Did you talk about our needs? So I told her what happened, exactly what I'm saying. Then she looked at me, and I'll never forget. She had this real big smile, and she got up, made her coffee, didn't say nothing, sat down, and she was just like, you could just see her in deep thought. Then she turned to me and she said, you know that they know who you are, right? And I said, not really. She goes, son. She goes, they study us. They have always studied us. So anytime that whoever gets in those office, the United States, they already know who they're going to confront. She goes, you've been disobedient to them because you're fighting for us. You've been fighting for us. She goes, what I'm really happy about is that they showed you all their weapons. They showed you better not ever argue with them. You better never, ever fight them. Because look, if you try to fight us forcefully, blow you away. You try to fight us within the law, we got our system. Politics, no way you're going to get anything. So she was so happy. But I said they're worried as a leader, like, well, how am I going to get things for our people? How are we going to defend this and defend that? Then she says to me, but they also showed you their weakness. She goes, what they showed you in the weakness was they don't have a heart. We all have a heart. It's just something has covered it. Now you have to go after it. You have to go after that heart of this country. So I'm so happy because they showed their weakness. Can you believe that?
Yeah.
After like 500 years, and you have this lady telling me, this is their problem. Yeah. They don't know how. And it fits right with capitalism, colonization, that I began to look at America, all these people, as the modern slaves like in Egypt.
Right.
Building, working. And the capitalism had control over them. It's the same thing here. So every morning when I get up and I see the miners going to work, I'm like, man, that's like the new Egyptians, like how they brought all these people as different slaves and everything, that's all they know. That's all we know, and it really taught me a lot. And so you're right, in what you're saying and the questions you have, but we got to wake up, we got to see beyond what's been camouflaged, and we have to see what's beyond that. And the way you see what's beyond that is knowing who you are, know where you come from, know what your beliefs are. And that's what worries about me when even our people begin to lose that.
And that's what I was saying with the religion of Apache Stronghold, because what we were saying earlier, there are so many environmental organizations that also filed to stop Oak Flat resolution copper, and the only one that's stopping resolution copper is Apache Stronghold. And it's because you guys, because what you guys have done, with the courts and everything. So right there, you could tell the United States is not worried about environment, because the environmental organizations that file, nothing ever happened. You don't even hear about those. Only thing we hear about is the Apache Stronghold, because we're fighting for our way of life, because the sacred land, sacred water, for religion, freedom religion. So that's when I understood, like, okay, this is why we are fighting like this, because it's holding the United States government back from mining the copper.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and it's like I was saying, I guess leading up to, was that this is the last war, because it really comes down to what is sacred, what is holy, you know, and what does the Mother Earth mean to all of us. Because within the laws, they can exempt all these things. And, you know, I give prompts to, you know, all the organizations that are still working very hard, you know, to bring the environmental argument to the forefront, because all of that is true. Every disaster, everything that's going to happen, the water drought, the loss of aquifers, the temperature rising, Arizona losing an economy base, because who's going to want to come here when the disaster moves closer to the metropolitan? And how's it going to affect? Their things are going to be airborne. They're exempt from, you know, being watched by any environmental department of the United States of things that they do wrong. And so all of that's going to be gone. So they can really deploy all the ugliness of contamination out further. And what does it mean for Arizona? You know, who's going to come here? And I see nobody coming here. I even have people drive through Globe, Miami. They can't even understand why people live in a place like this. They will never live here. So look at that at a bigger context, because if you look at towards Tucson, Phoenix, they're doing this. I'm towards Tucson. They're doing the same thing. San Vista, you know, they're all fighting to keep big corporations out, and they're coming after water. They're coming after more electricity. You know, all these things are happening right now. So you are right when it comes to the environmental laws. Is when John McCain, I mean, as easy as that, just them coming together, you know, agreeing on a bill and wiping that all out. So when I look at the people who are really fighting for the environment, because, you know, I am fighting for the environment too, but what has never been argued is the religious part. And that's where the confrontation is at, and that's where we're holding ground. But here I said, it's like, I guess if I could say, like the people of Superior who really care, you know, the concerned citizens and other organizations that really care, it's like they're doing CPR. You know, they're trying to keep it alive, because that person that's about to die is tragic. They're right. But they need us, you know, and we need them, because once we move forward in here, then the body of the environment of the argument is revived, you know. Now we can go after resolution copper. So we need everybody. That's what I'm saying. If you don't believe in the religion, then you got all the environmental catastrophe that's coming. So you have to believe in that at least, you know?
And our religion, our way of life is Mother Earth, but non-natives call it environmental, you know, and so it's the same thing. It's just that we call it in a different way. We worship Mother Earth, so they tell us it's a religion. So to them, that's, you know, they call it environmental, you know, activists. That's what they almost doing the same thing, really. But again, we had mentioned before, the government won't listen to non-natives who say they're spiritually connected to land or water, mountains, because they're not native. So they can't even go that route. They have to go a way of environmental. And then here we come, you know, with the religion of, you know, worshiping Mother Earth. So again, Apache Stronghold's only way to stop it is that one way we're doing it.
And again, you're right. You know, going back to the things that you looked at, because again, it takes me back to the argument with the Forest Service when they said clearly that in a spiritual fight, the type of spiritual fight that we're in a holy fight about deities living here, it's only geared to Native people. And when we did have a white lady who had experienced, you know, some spiritual happenings at Oak Flats, and she became part of writing a statement to the United States about what it meant to her, it was completely taken out because the response from the United States was she's a white lady, and that white people cannot put claim to any kind of spiritual happening between them and Mother Earth, only the Indian people. And that's when I went to the churches and I said, do you guys believe in what your government is saying about you? And what's so crazy, Maton? It's about all religion. I mean, the things, religions that you see on TV, you know, the Catholic Church, the Lutheran Church, I mean, all these major, I mean, it applies to them. And what the United States said was that if they want any kind of spiritual connection with the earth, they can go back to where they came from. And it was just told to me. And I'm like, and they call America home? You know, I'm like, wow, you know. It's really keeping these people who came that are not, you know, come from ancestors of America,
Mm-hmm.
it really keeps those people in a containment in a box.
Mm-hmm.
And they tend to believe that, you know, they can't fight, they can't say. But exactly what you said, they put all those, I guess you would say, religious definitions, they put it into the environmental language.
Yeah.
And that's how they were able to disguise it against their own people. So when I look at that, that's against their own people to not have any kind of religious ties or any religious happening. And it just blows me away, you know, and I think that's why, you know, we've gotten a lot of good response from religious groups, religious churches, and why they have joined on an amicus brief in the case, because they realize how the United States looks at them. So when you talk about the Constitution coming here for freedom of religion, no, they never came here for freedom of religion either. They were put in a box and saying, this is as far as you can go. But see, with Native people, you know, they actually try to put us in a box too, but common sense, we should know that we're not in that box. And I'm outside the box. The Apache Stronghold's outside that box saying, no, you're not going to frame us like you did everybody else. And that's what every tribe should do. You know, every tribe should go back and take care of their sacred places, regardless of what the United States does. Because what they didn't do and what they should have done is here at Oak Flats. I've been living there for 4 years in government land, protecting a holy and sacred site under the United States negligence.
Yeah.
They've not chased me out, and I'm there, you know, for that particular reason. So that precedence has been set. So a lot of our people that need to go back to their sacred places need to, because if not, they hold that against you, that it's already gone.
Yeah.
You know, and then if you're not there, how are you going to argue it? You know, you have to go back to your sacred places.
Yeah, that's true. But it just, you know, hopefully people will wake up and find out, you know, what's really going on today. And everybody knows that the government is going after, I mean, they're after, you know, trying to go after Greenland, because Greenland's got a bunch of minerals there, you know. And so it's all about minerals and money. But, you know, the only thing I wanted to say is, you know, people have been asking about, you know, about the EIS, if it's been released. So the thing I got when I looked it up is that the final EIS for residue copper project was initially released in January 2021, but was subsequently withdrawn by the Forest Service in March 2021. And that's because they didn't remind you guys, they didn't tell you guys about it. You guys went to court and they had to pull it, right? That's why it was pulled. Okay.
Yeah.
And then on April 17th, the Forest Service announced its plan to republish the EIS and draft decision, initiating a 60-day period before the land transfer can proceed. So that's what came out on April 17th. That it hasn't come out yet, but it's gonna get released.
Yeah, they're informing us that they're gonna do it. So they didn't say that, you know, they didn't do that before, but yeah, they're doing it now.
Okay, so it does say the Forest Service, you know, 60-day notice period, which began on April 17th, so it started April 17th, sets the stage for the potential land transfer to residential copper. If the Supreme Court does not intervene within this period, the transfer could proceed, leading to the development of copper mine. So it says that Apache Stronghold and other opponents continue to advocate for protection of Oak Flat, emphasizing culture, religious significance, and environment.
Yeah, and I mean, we're ready. You know, I mean, I guess I would say there's a lot of things I wish I could share, but I mean, we're ready. Yeah. I think from the listeners out there, you could tell that I'm excited.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, this is a day we've been waiting for, and you know, I guarantee you, we have our spiritual arrows in the roll right now.
Yeah.
So we're good, but the big part is going to be the people of this country. You know, you cannot sit back. You know, we've been suppressed from the media. You know, we've been suppressed big time. And it's unfortunately that, like, a lot of this had to be hand delivered by the Stronghold as we travel throughout the country. But also, like your podcast here, you know, to reach out to the listeners. But you have to come involved. There's, you know, right now, if you're looking at tribal governments, they really don't have a fight like this coming up the ladder. There's nothing behind us. This represents the indigenous people. This court case represents all of us.
Right.
And it has to do with our reservation. It has to do with our sacred sites, land on federal land, religion, you know, everything, you know. And for the American people, the religion, you know, what does it mean? I mean, it's going to push the United States to have to answer some questions that they never answered to nobody in this country. And that's the exciting thing, because to me, we're all being blessed. So where we are right now, as I was sharing you earlier, that, I'm going to be leaving for Phoenix here today and heading back, and I'll be having meetings in San Carlos and as well as at Oak Flats on Saturday at 10 o'clock.
Okay.
But this is the time that, we're going to reach out to the administration, to Trump, because a lot of people still tend to make it like an Indian issue. It's not an Indian issue. And so with feedback that I get, Trump is really into numbers. So if we can hit all parts of the country notifying Trump and his administration, then more than likely, the administration will know that they have a fight on their hands. And they could be advised, Trump could be advised to pull back the EIS just like it was done before.
Right.
They have the power to do that. And then what's so crazy, here in Arizona, we have legislative leaders or Congress leaders that can just put a bill together and ask for a long delay, or they can ask to stop the whole project. I mean, that's as simple as it is, but it comes back again to all the things that we discuss about the negativity about when leaders don't do the right thing. So anyway, I would just say, for those who know you or are in contact with you, to keep the contacts, because we'll be hitting this really quick, really soon. We'll be moving really fast. I was asked that, what about coming to Oak Flats? And I tell them that, it's not going to be the kind of protest that you probably are accustomed to. I said, this is a religious position.
Yeah.
I said, we're coming to pray. We're coming because this has got to stop. And that goes to the conscience of all people. We need to initiate it. We need to show our children, what real religion is for all of us, and what real care for Mother Earth is for all of us. Let's not lose this opportunity by using violence or using force. Because that we could just go back to your own home. When you take care of your children in this way, they listen. But if you're forceful and you're doing things, nobody listens in the house. But if we really care, we really need to handle it, and let the Creator, let Mother Earth lead us, because that's going to be important.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited. I've been waiting. I'm going to be 66 years old, and
Right.
I come in a time of where a lot of the old people born in early 1900s or even some late 1800s, I was among them in the 60s, and just the way I grew up, I feel like I've always been the link between the two, to worry about where we're going to go for the future. But I think there's a lot of us like that out there, but we really need to come together, and we really need to start advocating so that, our young kids can see the road that they need to build. But if we don't do it, then in a way too, it's our fault, that we didn't show our children the right way. But not just our children, all children.
Yes.
And I, there's some cases that non-natives are the first one to follow me, first one to advocate, first one, and I applaud them for that, because they just been waiting. I did tell a group of non-Indians that if only you guys would have a good leader, if you only could have a great leader that understands all this stuff, this country would be different. I said, but unfortunately, you don't have that leader. I said, so, and it was cute. Then I said, what about you? So it was kind of good to hear something different coming from them, But no, we got work ahead of us.
Right.
And we got to move fast.
And when it first came out, what was it? Was it Monday? First thing I thought to myself was just seeing all of that on the media, social media, and on the news. I told my sister, well, let me go down there first. Let me go talk to Uncle, because he's not like he's panicking to me. I said, so that means he's something good's coming, like a good fight, I told her. So when I did come down and talk to you, and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I see now. It wasn't, because I told my sister, because Los Angeles have her dance there, and I said, if he didn't call you on the phone and tell you to change your dance, then we don't need to panic right now. And she's like, oh, okay. I was kind of worried. I was like, yeah. I mean, he, when I went down there, it doesn't seem like, Apache Stronghold, my uncle, or you weren't in a panic state. So already right there was a good signal for me. So that's what I was, telling people. Oh, no, it is a fight, and it is coming, but it's a good thing for us because, we finally get to fight. Actually, we've been in a limbo, and now we finally got terms where kind of like the bell rung in the boxing match.
Yeah,
that's why I say.
No, yeah. I was telling Teresa, my wife. I was telling her, I said, she goes, "Oh God, you're just so excited. You're just so hyper." I said, "Yeah, I said I hate to use this as an example, but only when I got." I said, "I played basketball, so I said it's like I took myself out of the game to go use the restroom, and I came back and they jumped like 3 points ahead.
Yeah,
and I'm like, get me back in the game. Like the buzzer went off, and now I'm getting on the court." So I'm excited. I've been like exactly what you said. I've been waiting, and let me just end that part with Lozen. I'm really proud because I don't know if people know out there that when these places are picked of ceremonial, it's done by the girl. It's not really done by the adults, and so it's really something for Lozen to pick her dance there at Oak Flats. So let me get into the negligence and consultation. This is again where the United States fail. Because if they're in fact really cared and they really wanted to do their due diligence by the law, even though we don't agree, then they would have had the consultation of talking to Lozen, talking to the family. And it's easy as the United States turn around and telling Resolution Carver, no, we're not going to move this until the girl has her sunrise ceremony because this is where her deities are at, and we're going to kill it. And we don't want to be a part of denying her rights to a place of worship. So even your niece, is in this fight, and that would probably even gravitate into the argument into the Supreme Court because again, it just shows the negligence of the kind of consultations they have with tribes. They just just willingly walk over everybody, but it's got to stop. And Lozen has a lot behind her to stand by, and there's this little girl. Now it's her turn to defend, this place as the other girls had defended this place, and that's why I get emotional about that because it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be this way, but it just shows how much the United States don't care for your ceremonies. So those of you out there that think that the United States care for your ceremony, they do not care.
No,
and you gotta really come to terms. They will send people to talk to you really nice and. Like they can work things out, but they're just a mouthpiece. They're going to do at will what they want. That's why we have to fight them in this way. And that's why I keep saying my door is always open to the many different people to join us so you can actually learn this fight so you can kind of defend your places and know that you're not the only one going through this. But collectively, we're strong. But we have to keep on that spiritual road. And that's why I'm so proud of Lozen because, I'm just proud of her because now, here's this little girl that's going to face up to the United States and tell them no, so your sister, she'll probably be talking to our attorneys real soon because they're going to defend her rights, and that was wrong. So I love it because you have a little girl gonna fight the United States, and that's awesome, in this era that we're in. With all the tragedy that our people had gone through. But it's good people are coming to the forefront. So now you're going to have a lot of not traditional, but Christian entities and religious groups are all going to be back in Lozen in this fight. So that's coming down the road quick.
Yeah. I know. She's got her heart set on that place. So, it just makes, because all of my daughter and your granddaughters have had their dances there. It's a personal fight, And when people ask about Oak Flat, I always say, if you want to know about Oak Flat, just go there. And that's all you need to do is go there. And when you go there, you're going to understand why we're fighting for this fight, for this land. And that's my main thing. Just go there. I can't explain to you. You just got to go because, this is the reason why we're fighting for Oak Flat.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
All right, Uncle. Well, thank you for stopping by. Again, giving us the update because a lot of people were asking, and I just wanted to clear things up with everybody. That the Oak Flat fight it's continuing, and that we need everybody's support. And if anybody needs any kind of information, they go to ApacheStronghold.com. They go to the Beckett Law website. So there's a lot of websites. I do want to say though, Uncle, when I went to the Apache Stronghold today to look up something, it told me this is the first time it happened to me. It said there's a warning. If you want to proceed, then hit OK. And that's the first time I saw that on Apache Stronghold. Most of the time, I've never seen that. So I was like, all right, what's going on? So that happened today. So just let my aunt know that there was some kind of warning sign before I actually got into the Apache Stronghold website.
They did kind of check on that, so they said if you just have to get through it, it's okay.
Yeah, but
we're like,
because some people they'll just stop.
Yeah,
some people will just say, I don't want no spam, and just stop.
Yes.
So I mean, it's kind of like trying to defer people away from that website.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Yeah,
and we did check that it was okay, but like you said, it does stop a lot of people.
It defers somebody for just seeing that. That's all.
And then if they can contact us directly, if anything, if they worry about it, which is understandable, they can contact us directly. So we're ready to talk with them directly.
But that's the first time that ever happened to me. Yeah. I've gone to Apache Stronghold plenty of times, so that was surprising with that. So, and then also everybody could, if you want to get more information, go to Apache Messenger.com. My aunt they have a great subscription, really easy to fill out, and it's a good source to check the Apache Messenger. So again, Uncle Juan, thank you very much.
Okay,
and thank you for fighting for flat.
I'm gonna tell one last thing to your listeners, because you may have different listeners listening, and if they have critical questions, and it'd be good if they kind of refer to you, and then you could bring me back on, and we could ask, because I think it's really important for non-natives and natives to understand. And me serving in the council that long and fighting this position on our religion and so forth, I think it's some kind of it's an experience that I would love to give back to people, so that people, if they're moving forward on an issue, then they don't have to reinvent a wheel. Okay. There's already stuff there, and then also with legal help, things that we can reach out and help other tribes or other religious groups. I mean, that's really what the stronghold is. And just like how we're working with our friends up in Nevada, as far as fighting lithium. What's going on there, and as well as you with your tribe, the Pomos. Things that we've been doing with a lot of people out there, we certainly need to all come together and use our expertise. But if they have any questions, they'd like to have me come back on the podcast again and answer some of them, I'll be happy to do it.
So we'll put it out there. Everybody mostly get most of my contacts from Instagram. So anybody on Instagram could go to the Fight for Resistance podcast page, and they could send their questions in there, or also the email on this episode. So I'll have all the links for when this episode comes out. I'll have the links for Apache Stronghold, Apache Messenger, Beckett Law, and we'll also hit the all the websites for social media. So if anybody wants any questions, please just give us just send it in, and we'll have my uncle back on to answer all those questions. Okay, so thank you very much, Uncle. Thank you very much for stopping by.
Oh yeah.
All right.
Thank you all for tuning into the Fight for Existence podcast. If you guys want to keep up with the podcast in general, what you could do is follow the social media account. The Instagram account is going to be Fight for Our Existence. Again, that's Fight number 4 Our Existence. Go ahead and give that a follow. And if you guys have any questions for us, or you guys would like to be on the podcast, in the Instagram there's a link. Go ahead and click that. No matter what kind of platform you guys listen to this podcast on, there's always that plus or that follow button. So go ahead and click that so you guys can get notifications when we upload our next episode. And if you guys are listening on Spotify, what you can do is go ahead and rate the show. And if you guys are only listening on Apple Podcasts, what you can also do is write a review for the show. Thank you all for tuning into the Fight for Existence podcast, and we will talk to you next time.